Hey everybody, Tom Sparks with Sparks Media Group. Today we're going to go through the process of replacing the LCD screen on this Sony A7 III. This camera is my trusted real estate photography camera, and a while ago I dropped it and cracked the screen. I went on eBay and purchased a replacement screen that came in, and I put it on, but it did not include the black plastic frame around the screen. And I had to use the old electronic tape, double-sided tape that attached the LCD screen to the black frame. I didn't have any tape at the time, so I used the old tape, and it was kind of wobbly, as you can see. So I finally purchased some double-sided electronic tape, and we're going to go through the process of taking the screen off and putting the tape on and then putting the screen back on. Now I will say that I'm doing a voiceover on this video. I did this video in two parts, and when I originally put this screen back on the camera and turned it on, I ended up frying the screen. And I did that because I used some metal tweezers to put the ribbon cable in place, and I found out that that was a bad idea. I ended up nicking one of the contacts on the ribbon cable, and it fried the screen. So I went on eBay and I purchased a replacement screen. I'll put the link in the description to the screen that I bought. This screen that came in did include the black plastic frame, which was great. So I didn't need to do the process of putting the sticky tape on. But at least in this video, you'll see the process of doing that if you buy a screen that doesn't have the frame on it. I'm going to leave this video in its entirety unedited so that you can see the entire process of me putting this screen back on, frying it, and then putting the new screen on that I got in the mail a couple days later, and the process of troubleshooting that. Before you start the process, I would watch the video through the end just so that you're aware of all the steps. The first step I'm going to do is take off the two screws on the bottom of the frame, and then the second two screws on the back of the frame. I'll put a link in the description to the precision screwdriver set that I use. Really handy. It has a bunch of different bit sizes. Once the four screws are off, we want to ensure that the battery is out before we do anything from this point on. We're going to pry the frame off, and it just simply unclicks. There's a little tab at the top, and then it slides open similarly to a book. The back plate is made out of metal, and that should just kind of fall off a little bit. And you'll see the ribbon cable here. This ribbon cable is connected on the back side of this metal frame. Now this aluminum or metal back plate is pretty annoying. In this video I bent it out of place, but you actually don't have to bend it. If you wiggle it around enough, it'll get loose and slide out of the way. Now, here's where I made the first mistake. I'm using metal tweezers to pull this out. With this plate out of the way, it's pretty easy to use your fingers and just pull it out. Now, if you're unplugging yours is probably already broke, so you can be a little more forceful. But what you want to do is grab the dark part of the ribbon cable and pull on that. That's the thicker piece of plastic, and it's okay to pull on that. Again, don't use metal tweezers. Use your fingers and pull it out with your fingers. Now, the smaller of the ribbon cables, there's a little microchip on it, and it has a little bit of adhesive that's holding it to this metal frame. It's not too strong, but it will require you to kind of pull it off a little bit. Now, to clarify, this is a new LCD screen on my old frame. I just didn't have enough of the double-sided sticky tape at the time to secure it. So I only had it in a couple corners, and the screen was wobbling on the frame. Didn't affect the use of it, but it just didn't look good. So I'm pulling off the old double-sided sticky tape. And this is the double-sided electronics repair tape that I purchased on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description for this too. I'm just using the tweezers to make sure that the tape is adhered to the black frame. Now that I have the tape stuck, I'm going to pull off the other side of the coating. And from there, I'm going to put the screen in the frame. The Sony logo is going to go on the bottom where the screw holes are. Now I'm just pushing the screen in place to make sure that it's making contact with the tape. Now what we're going to do is fish the ribbon cables through the back of the frame. Now you can see how easily that metal back plate kind of just fell out of place. So I really didn't have to bend it as I did. It's not a huge deal. It's very thin and I can bend it back. But here's where I went wrong. Using the metal tweezers on that part of the ribbon cable, it's very thin and I punctured it. So when I put the battery in and powered on the camera, it burned out. And there's a little black mark on the ribbon cable. So at this point, I think that the thicker cable is pushed in all the way, and I should be good. So I'm going to move on to the smaller cable, which once I get it started in there, goes in really simply. Now what I'm going to do is put it back together. So the black frame, aluminum frame that's on the back side goes underneath the plastic frame. Like so. Now I'm going to put the 4 screws back in. And that should have been it. I'm going to put the battery back in. Going to throw a lens on it. And power it on. So there's power to the camera. And I don't see anything on the screen. So now I'm wondering what's going on. So here we are, back with the camera. I've taken the old screen off, and I purchased the new screen. It arrived in the mail a couple days later. This in my hand is the old screen. The old screen meaning the one that I fried. And you can see that dark spot by the ribbon is where it burned. So we have a paperweight. This is the new screen that I purchased on eBay. It arrived in a couple days. I'll put a link in the description. First time opening it up. And I'm pleasantly surprised that it includes the black plastic frame, which means I don't have to go through the process of putting the sticky tape on it. Now, one thing I will also say is that this original screen, although when I put it on, it did work, my touch screen wasn't working. And I thought that I had just hit a button and turned off touchscreen this whole time. But I come to find out that apparently that screen wasn't, I don't know if it was a knockoff or if it wasn't a good replacement. I don't know. But that original screen that I had on there that I just fried didn't have touchscreen capabilities. And you'll see that in this video, the new screen, when I put it on, my touchscreen capabilities restored. So here we go. We're going to do this again. This time I'm going to use a plastic removal tool, and I'm going to try to use that to push it in. The key is to get the ribbon started in the slot. And I didn't want to have a repeat of what happened with the tweezers, so I ended up foregoing this plastic tool and just using my fingernails. Thankfully, I hadn't cut them, so they were a little bit longer, and they had just enough length to grip this dark plastic piece, which allowed me to push it into the slot. Now I'm starting on one side and I'm going to the other side, and I'm going to work back and forth until it's in all the way, or what I think is all the way. This little one goes in like a piece of cake. So that looks into me. Now I'm going to put it all back together. This thin aluminum or metal backplate was getting pretty beat up. So I think the next time the screen breaks, I'm probably just going to buy a new camera. Not because the metal's getting beat up, but you know, at this point this camera's getting pretty old, and it might be time for an upgrade. Now we have the screen on. what we're going to do is put a battery in and try to fire it up. Now, I originally turned it on and nothing was happening. And I realized I need to put the lens on. The LCD screen in the viewfinder works, the camera works, but the screen isn't turning on. Now I'm starting to sweat thinking that I fried a second screen. But we're going to take it apart to look. So the thicker of the cables came off really quick, which led me to believe that it wasn't in all the way. It doesn't look fried at all. So I'm going to put it back on and we're going to see what happens. Again, just using my fingers to start it on one side, work to the other, and back and forth until it's in all the way. Now we're going to put the smaller of the ribbon cables in place. And again, this one slides in pretty easily. put a battery in, put the lens on, turned it on, and voila, we have a screen. And you'll see that the touchscreen does work. So now that I know that everything works, I'm gonna take the lens off, take the battery out, and screw the screen back down. Now, a couple things to remember. Please don't do this with the battery in place. If there's any charge that's on the capacitors or in the battery, you could fry something. Also, if you have an electronic static discharge band, I would recommend wearing one. An anti-static band. And you don't have to bend that metal back plate as I did. If you wiggle it around enough, it'll slide out of place. I was having some issues at this point just from taking it on and off so many times. This metal piece by the screw bent up, so I used my screwdriver to flatten it down a little bit. Now I'm going to put the 4 screws back in, and that's all there is to it. So this video is about a little over 37 minutes long. It would have been a lot shorter if I cut out the unnecessary steps of replacing the double-sided sticky tape and taking on and off the screen so many times. But I wanted to leave that in so you guys could see kind of a real-world example of what you might deal with if you have to replace this. I don't know what it would cost to send this camera out to get it repaired from a Sony repair facility, but for a little over $110 I was able to do this myself in about a half hour, and I have a perfectly good working camera out of it. Comment with any questions you guys have. If you find this video useful, give it a like. If you don't like it, give it a dislike. Feel free to share it. And as always, if you find my channel useful, please subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys.